Good afternoon, class. Today we will see another topic, that is a transaction flow testing. In previous classes, we have covered first unit, which is about the basics of the testing, and path testing, which is using the flow graphs, that is a control flow graphs. Here today we are discussing transaction flow testing in the second unit. So before getting into that, so what is a transaction? How we can define a transaction means any unit of work, means it's not a complete work or a complete uh, project or a complete one which has to be specified. So here any unit of the work which is been executed from system users point of view, then we can be specified as a transaction. Means if you specify uh, withdrawing a money or sending the money through any online payment, or we can say that by using the LMS, we can take the that is issuing the book or returning the book, or getting an admission or filling an application, whatever the it may be. If it is being specified as a unit of, means it has a birth and it has been successfully ended, then it is being specified as a transaction. So this result of the transaction can be given to the input for another transaction also. Sometimes the transactions what we are specifying will be means partitioned, means will be divided into some other transactions. Some transactions has to be merged to form one transaction. So likewise, there are many such things to be considered when we are dealing with the transaction. So when a transaction can be placed, or the when it takes here is, we can specify that it can start from the a very starting point, that is a initiation point of your work, or we may can take at the in the middle of that one, a unit can be specified. If you taking that merging of two transactions can be a birth of the transaction. Likewise, the transaction has to be considered in many things. So the birth can be taken in multiple ways, and we can merge up the transactions to form a single transaction also. So what are the transactions means here we are having one example. So this example is specifying online information which is retrieving the data here. So first these are the steps we need to follow for. Means in users point of view, we won't consider all these things here. What we are doing is we are giving the login, and it is been getting into the system. It will allow you to access the data or update the data and then log out. But when you are considering this transaction as a system users point of view, first we need to accept the input. The input means what is the login we are using here. The login here we are using is the birth or the birth year or the birth format of the user. We need to validate that birth. Okay. So here we can specify that what is the transaction it's taking into the consideration. So here we are taking the input. So this input can be specified as a tentative birth. So here the tentative birth means you are not starting the transaction here. What it is means specifying, it is been taking the data. That's all. Means it is been considering accepting the data from you, and it is not validating the data. After validating the data only, what it is doing here, the transaction has been considered to be admin performed. After getting the transaction is being initiated, we need to transmit our acknowledgement to the requester. What is the request here is, we need to take an input file for processing, and we need to update the input file. So before updating the input file, we need to search for the file. So here, this transaction what have been initiated, has to be taken by the requester, and the requester will allow you to search for a file. So by giving the file name, it will search. After searching that one, so what it is here is, we need to consider what the data, what you are processing, means what is the file name you are searching, whether it is consist or not. By accepting the input, it will validate whether it is there or not. If it is there, then it will try to process the request, and then next it will allow the access to that file, and it will allow the person to update the file. After updating that one, this updation work has to be transmitted to the requester, and whatever the work done by you on that file has to be recorded. So for this, we are using log, and we need to clean up all this. Means we have to, the person who has been logged in or initiated transaction has to be stopped. So that is the transaction what is been raised has been successfully ended. So there the transaction will ends there. That transaction which has been ended, the which has been processed, is being specified as a death here. So when we are considering any type of the transaction, so when we are taking the transaction to be an initiative, means whenever we are specifying that you have given such data, to be processed, then only what it is doing, by validating only, it will process the transaction from there. If it is not validating, what is the purpose of processing? So then the request of the transaction will not be raised there. And coming to the another representation, we are having one diagrammatical part here. So see, we are initiating a transaction which is we are purchasing, and we have some that is redeem points to be used. So first thing is, a transaction has been initiated. So this transaction what have been done by me or by the user has to be stored there. So this transaction what we are storing will have some information. If the transaction won't have the information, particularly it will end here. And then next what we have to do here is, if the transaction has such information, if the transaction is there, transaction has been performed, what we need to do, we need to take store payment information. How much you've been paid has to be stored there. And then store means if it is not making to access the transaction, means it is not that the work has been completed here. It is been initiated, the transaction is done, and you are eligible to pay your money. But here, if you are using any credit cards or any, we need to check that whether you are having any, that is balance or the enough credit or not. If you are having enough credit, your amount will be deducted, means in the debit or the credit card, your amount will be deducted, and then rest of the will perform. If it is not having the enough credit, then the transaction will be ended there itself. And here in this one we are accessing, not only the credit, also what you are doing is, we need to maintain the transacted purchase items list also. So whenever we are reaching to at this point, we need to check for the credit card, and also we need to give the data to the, if the payment terms has been reached, the transaction for these items has been done or not, we should know. So here, if it is done, means here the purchase has been done, and it is being checked here, then what it is doing, it is been specifying that the items what have been purchased has to be linked to the client's account. So after that it is a newly purchased items, then you will do this one. These are not newly purchased items, already it has been have some information about that one, then there is no need to add this list of the items to the client account. What you have to do is nothing but we need to take, no need to present this one. So one go for the another transaction which is mentioning that the transaction what you are having that have the information about the purchased items or not. Yes, we are having the purchased items information, then this items what you have been purchased means the which have been redeemed will be deleted, will be deducted from your list, the remaining will be present there only. If you are not having, if you are not having such information about that one, means that a list of the elements are not with you, and what it happens, it will end that one. So likewise we are having for each and every work we will have the transaction here, and the transactions what it is doing, it is been giving the clear information how we are going to perform, what the process has to be performed by the user to perform a task. So likewise for the control statements, we have the control flow graph for the statement, for the transactions what we are having, the transactions also having the transaction flow graph. So this transaction flow graph what you are representing will be likely as a flow chart only, but here we need to represent each and everything what we are performing in the programmer's point of view. So what this flow graph will impact, or the what this flow graph is representing, is whether the transaction what you are designed, what you are mentioned here been means imposing the functionality of the, means for what you have been designed this flow graph will be representing or not, means the functionality has to be achieved by the flow graph, means the flow graph has to be designed to endive the behavior of the system. See here one example which has been taken as a flow graph representation for processing the printing a paper, here, so or the printing some documents to here. So how it is been started, first one, user will begin. So here what you have to do, you need to reordering, means you need to specify that want to execute many or you want to access many. If not, cancel the statement, or means you are having three such outputs for processing. I want to reorder. Reorder means I want to reprint here. What I have to do here is, while I am placing a reorder, from here the reorder will be started, means from this state. So this state or this a what you are representing will be the starting of his transaction. So where it will start from, where here means we need to request this, and we need to place the order form which is been presented given by the CPU. And then next by filling that one means we need to wait for, we are getting the request order form from the CPU. We need to read the request order form and we need to fill up all that one. All this work will be specified in the process 2, which is been specified as a wait. And coming to the next one, whatever you have been filled has to give to this CPU, that is accept the order form given by the user to the CPU, and then next it will process the form. So here a request form has been completed its task. This process, this transaction what you are mentioning has been stopped there itself, and we are getting into the next transaction, that is a B. We need to transmit this one to the terminal, means information has to be terminal. So after that we need to go for the another transaction, that is which is the C. So it will accept the inputs from us, means how many pages you want to include, or what is the format, like that it is. If you want to add many fields to that one, then you will go for, again you will start with the C. If it is not like that, you will transfer your answer to the CPU. There lies the transaction D, 1 unit of work D. D, what it is doing is, it will wait for the CPU to confirm that you are having enough pages, or you are having uh, you are allowed to print your pages. So here what it is doing, it is allowing to specify that confirmation of your work. The confirmation of the work is a valid one. If it is a valid one, then what it is doing is, it is been specified that okay, go for the processing. If it is not like that, if it is not valid, then what it is doing, you need to go for the diagnostic to terminal. Terminal means here, means you need to change the input values, and then you need to go for the processing. So whatever you are giving here, we are making some decisions. So these 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D are represent as the decisions. Fourth decision is taking, you want to insert many pages here. Yes, means you need to go for the B, and you need to pay, you need to take, change the input also. If it is not like that, no, I want to review that one. After that, I will uh, review the review, and then next I will print, means then it will go for the yes, and if it not, then it will go for the exit. Likewise, it is processing. So that is the transaction flow graph, and each and every transaction, each and every unit of work has been divided. This unit of work, what you are processing, what you are processing has been given names. That is transaction 1, 2, 3, 4 has been given. Sorry, A, B, C, D, like that. We have given the names here. And coming to the next one, like as I said, the transaction what we are mentioning has the means birth and then merger. Means where a transaction will make a birth, means, so there are the three such specifications here. Means whenever we are considering uh, two nodes or the two transactions will make the birth of the one transaction. What are the merging? What is the another type of the birth of the transaction is merging. How we are processing here is, we need to merge two other transactions to form a new transaction. So first go for the birth of a transaction. Next, the transaction birth, which is by which occurred by merging other transactions. The first one is the decision. It is being taken, we are been reaching one point, then you need to consider, then you need to specify that other transaction will be. So your circumstances or your inputs or your environment will decide which path or the which transaction to be selected. Biases means it will take the birth of the new transaction. This transaction will execute along with the parent transaction. And coming to the mitosis, mitosis will take that the transaction will uh, cause the occurrence of the two other transactions, and it will lost its execution, and it try to execute the other two. See here. So these are the representations, decisions. You have been reached here. So this point will decide you, will make you to use any other at this representation. Means you have only the chance to execute only one. And coming to the next one, that is the biosis. The parent process will create the child process, and it simultaneously parent process and the child process are executing. And coming to here, parent process will exit or will store, will kill itself, and it creates two other child process, other child transactions. These two child transactions will have the benefits of the parent, and they execute them, and they continue their execution. So here it means splitted, means the splitting of the transactions here. The splitting of the transactions here, we will choose both the paths or some only one path while executing. Whereas coming to the mergers, it is quietly opposite to the buts. So here we are using two transactions to merge up and execute. Any transaction, any transactions what you're processing will be merged up if they are being able to form a transaction. Sometimes the transactions will be absorbed, like that we are having second one. What it is, see here, we are taking the path 1 and the path 2. We are coming across the path 1 and path 2. We are simultaneously executing path 1 and path 2, and we are reaching to a point, and then we are continuing. So that representation is specified as a junction. And then next one, absorption. Absorption is specified as a transaction which is having the high precedence or high priorities. It can be specified as a predator, and the other one can be specified as a prey. Prey will be absorbed by the predator, and the predator will be executed. Multiple parent classes will be there. This multiple parent classes all try to execute the try to form a new transaction, that is a child transaction. This child transaction will have the ability to access the both transactions data, and it will perform the methods or the things specified by these one, and it executes the transaction. So these are the two ways of getting the transactions here. So two specifications here, births and mergers. How can you get a transaction? Means you can get in a 6 ways. So, first one is the decision, next one is the biosis, and then next one is the mitosis, next one is the junction, and then fifth one is the absorption, sixth one is being specified as the conjugation. And coming to the transaction flow graph, transaction flow is being specified as a transaction flow testing. Transaction flow testing, to perform the transaction flow testing, we have the transaction flow testing techniques. So these are the techniques we are having. We have seen many methods in the previous sessions. So if we go for the first representation, what we are seeing, what we are having, so that is get the transaction flows. What it is representing. First, we need to consider what is the transaction, and we need to see whether the transactions has been listed or not. Listed means what are the transactions to be performed on that one. We should know. Means many complicated, simple, and different transactions has to be listed there. So how we are getting to these listers means we need to draw the control flow graphs here. We need to draw flow graphs, and then that is transaction flow graphs, and also how we are specifying some paths which are specifying. We need to give the detailed information for that info processing. Means what are the transactions to be considered has to be specified in the first one. And coming to the next one, inspections, reviews, and walkthroughs. This inspection, reviews, and walkthroughs means we need to gain the knowledge about this transaction. If such transaction has been earlierly done, what you have to do, we need to get the knowledge of that one. How I am going to get the knowledge of that such transactions means we need to consider inspections, reviews, and walkthroughs. Inspection means we need to check each and every hard copy or the information what you are providing to that one. Reviews means we need to take what the steps they have been taken to overcome the problem has to be specified there. And coming to the next one, walkthroughs means we need to means work along through these flow paths, and the next values, domains, the boundaries what you are taking has to be studied there. After getting the idea, after getting the knowledge here, means in the transaction, get the transaction flows, we have been drawing some paths or the flow graphs there. So by the through that flow graphs, we need to take that whether the transaction is achieving or not. So if the transaction has been specified, what you have to do is nothing but we need to third step. The third step is we need to select the path. So how we are going to select the paths which are being, means the paths what we have been selected has to cover the coverage, that is C1 plus C2. After that, we need to make the solutions which has been specified in the path sensitization. And path instrumentation here is the transaction has a output. This output has been achieved from intended path has not been specified here. And coming to the next and then last one, which is been specified as a design and maintain the test database. Here we need to maintain a database for the earlier processing what you are processing here. And coming to the last representation what we are having here is the test execution. Whatever you have been performed as a test has to be executed here. So likewise, we have performed all the methods what we are having. So that's about today's class. Thank you.